I got this little mic recently, so hopefully the audio on these videos will be a little bit better moving forward. Today's video is kind of a random one. I was kind of just interested in this topic and researched it and just realized there's actually a little bit to talk about here, so just make a fun little video on this topic. Today I was actually hanging out with one of my best friends, super cool dude, and we were talking about religion, philosophy, all this different stuff. And obviously these conversations are going to involve supernatural themes and things that come up. So when we were talking about how, I guess it was a conversation on sin or how negativity affects the world, and he cited that plants actually get affected by negativity. Plants actually grow less, and he cited some kind of study. And after I came home, I researched the study and looked it up to see if it was legitimate, because this is a very interesting thing. Like, as an atheist, I don't believe in anything supernatural, but that doesn't stop me from having an open mind about these things. So when I hear that there was a study done to find out that there was actually supernatural things happening and like negativity was actually affecting the plants, then yeah, I want to know about it. I would love to learn about it. So yeah, I hear that the negativity actually affects the plants, and I'm like, all right, let me go look up this study and look at the scientific research on this. And it really comes down to just a few very small studies done by like very small organizations, except for one, which is IKEA. But their experiment was not really a scientific experiment. They kind of just did something. It was more of a advertising campaign and an anti-bullying campaign rather than actually being a scientific experiment that could actually prove anything. But I did find one study that had their procedure listed out on a paper, unlike the IKEA study where they just set things up and kind of were not having very controlled. They didn't have control variables. They didn't have independent variables. They didn't have constants in the experiment. So I actually looked up a paper and I looked at the procedure, and there was just a huge issue with the procedure that clearly showed why they got the results that they got, of why plants actually got affected by negativity versus positivity. And I guess this video is really going to be talking about how we should make sure to read scientific studies for ourselves. I mean, obviously we're not going to go read every single scientific thing that we're told. We're going to just listen to some things if there's enough consensus on it. But when we hear something out there like plants get affected by negativity and positivity, specifically just human perceived concepts of negativity and positivity, then I think we should be a little bit more critical of the studies, and we should go into the studies, look at their procedure and how they were done to see if this is true. Now, if their study and procedure is sound and there's not too many issues and errors that we can see, then yeah, we can accept that plants get affected by negativity, and we can do further experiments and experiment these things. But if we see at some point that there's some kind of issue in the procedure, then we know this is not scientifically sound. But yeah, let's actually get into the study and what the procedure was in the study. I'll have it linked in the description so you guys can go read it for yourself. But one of the first issues I see in this study is that they have a kind of confirmation bias type of thing. They already have a set kind of belief on how negative and positive things affect things. They say words have power, they encourage, heal, comfort, criticize, hurt. It all depends on whether you choose to use them for good or evil. They affect adults, children, and plants alike. So I agree with the fact that the negativity or the positivity of these words, as conceived by humans, affects adults and children. But when it comes to plants, you're starting off with an assumption already. So that's the introduction of the experiment. They already believe that these things have supernatural powers. They already have this set belief. And then they're doing good on their procedures here where they're keeping constants. There's a leaf size are kept the same, the germination, the conditions, and the height is measured, and the same amount of food and water and sunlight is being provided to each plant, so they're being in a constant state of being equal with each other in terms of normal growing conditions for any plant that any plant needs. And then they start to describe their whole procedure of how they did this, how they realized that the positive words affect the plants. And this is where it all falls apart and has the biggest issue. So they say that the first pot was kept in good conditions, and it was at least an hour every day, or whatever amount of time. It was at least an hour, said positive words, seeing you blossom makes me happy, be healthy, we love you, said all these positive things to the plant. And then they say the second plant, which was supposed to be the negativity plant, which is like the plant that they curse at and there's just negative things being thrown at it, they actually had the same conditions, same growing conditions, same sunlight, but they only visited the plants for a few minutes, so the plant was neglected, right? Neglection, very human thing of negativity. We humans don't like to be neglected. Why does a plant care? Who knows? Very human thing. And then during these few minutes that the people came in, they said bad words to it. They said useless plant, stupid plant, and it was overall a negative type of expression towards the plant. And then they say they did this for 30 days to both plants, and then they see that the positive plant had much more growth, bloomed more, and the flowers were much more colorful than the negative plant that had not bloomed as much. Flowers kind of shrunk, were loopy, and they weren't very colorful. And then at the end of it, they say that you simply cannot deny that humans, animals, plants are affected by such influences in some degree. The power of your words, thoughts, and feelings could be much. So I see how this can be a very powerful thing. This is what IKEA did. This can be a very powerful thing against bullying, right? It's a visual demonstration of how bullying affects, how negativity creates a bad space, creates harm. But I don't think as the lesson that you should be teaching kids about bullying is that instead of teaching them about empathy and how even when you don't see a physical effect, you're really affecting this person, right? Even if you don't see them like turn red or like start foaming at the mouth, you're still affecting them, hurting their feelings, and you shouldn't be bullying people. Instead, we choose to show this visual representation of plants getting negatively affected. So I just feel like the kind of conclusion that you get from that is that if it's visually not getting affected, then I'm not negatively affecting it, right? So the plants visually lost their color, the plants were droopy and stuff, and I feel like the conclusion you get from that is that if I can't visually see that this thing is being harmed, then what I'm doing is not negative, right? Which obviously wasn't the conclusions that the kids reached. They thought that because the adults were interpreting for them, they thought that, oh yeah, the plants were getting harmed because of my words, and I don't know. The lesson here is just kind of sus. But anyways, let's get into the actual issue with this procedure. Is the issue here is actually that the issue here that I don't think they realized in the procedure is that one thing they were not keeping constant is the amount of talking to each plant. So they were talking to the positive plant for at least an hour a day, but then they neglected the negative plant, so they talked to it less, which that definitely had an impact on the amount of growth a plant can have, right? The actual studies, like multiple scientific studies have been done that have been proven to be true, have been done that has shown that vibrations allow plants to grow faster, speed up their growth, stimulate growth, stimulate cellular respiration and ATP production. So then we took this evidence of how talking, which is really just vibrations, you could do the same thing with music. It was done by the Mythbusters. They put metal music and like classical music next to some plants, and the metal music did way better. The plant with metal music grew way more because there was just more vibrations, allowing it to be stimulated and grow more. We associated this with the energy, the type of energy that's affecting the plant. So if it's negative energy, then it's not going to grow, and if it's positive energy, it's going to grow. When in this study, they're talking to the positive plant more. So there's more vibrations, more stimulus for growth, and they're neglecting the plant that's supposed to be getting bullied. So obviously that creates less vibrations because there's less talking going on with the bullying plant, and the plant's not going to grow. That's the only reason. The only reason the negative plant didn't grow as much as the positive plant is because it got neglected, it didn't get as much vibrational sound, and it ended up not being as stimulated as the positive plant that was getting at least an hour of vibrations per day. But yeah, that's pretty much the biggest issue with this, is that they didn't keep the same amount of time. I would like to see their procedure on how many words they said to each plant, because then maybe it would be a lot closer if they said like, okay, we said 5 compliments to this plant and then 5 5 negative things. It's just inconsistent on how many things they said to what plant, and obviously they neglected the plant, which they perceived as a negative thing. I don't know why the plant would care. They perceived that as a negative thing, so that ended up affecting the plant growth because there's not as many vibrations to stimulate their growth. But anyways, the lesson here isn't that we should focus on the positivity or the negativity that affects plants, because they're human made concepts. Like, we perceive things as negative because we just either subjectively hurts us or physically hurts us, and it's just that's why we perceive it as negative. So I don't know why plants would actually care about what they're being told. And I again, there's a surface blanket of just superstition here, where you believe that some kind of energy, some kind of different energy is being produced by you being negative versus you being positive. So that's just a superstition thing. But then anyway, the main lesson here is that we should be reading scientific studies, looking at their procedures, looking at it critically, and not just look at what Google says at first. Especially if there's something superstitious like positivity affected more growth. Like, that's definitely assuming some kind of superstition, because there has to be some kind of energy that we're not perceiving that's affecting these things. So I just say, when we're reading things about very unlikely things that have happened in life, whether it be miracles, whether it be superstitions like positivity or karma or whatever, look at the studies that are done on them. Look at the studies that say they're positive. Look at the studies that say they're negative. Look at their procedure and critically see if they have issues in them. And this one clearly had a huge issue with it, which is they didn't keep the same vibration amount with the positivity and the negativity. So that ended up creating more growth for the positive plant, confirming their confirmation bias that we saw in the introduction, and they just assumed that that was from the positivity, not because the amount of vibrations. But anyways, today's video was just kind of random one. I thought it was kind of interesting, make a video on this, learn a little mini lesson on studying scientific studies more and looking at their procedures and looking at it critically. But yeah, that's pretty much it for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you like my content on this channel, I'm going to be making a lot more content. Hopefully this microphone makes the audio much better. Subscribe and comment below if you have any thoughts on this. Let's have a discussion on it, and thank you so much for watching.